Hi, my name is Paul Dixon. I'm a writer. I came down to Washington in the late 60s to cover the space race. And I came down here about the time of the Apollo 1 fire. And I was covered NASA for Electronic Magazine right through the Apollo moon landing in 1968. And over that time, I have written a lot about space. I did a book some years ago called Out of This World, American Space Photography, and I did another book, a narrative, historic narrative on Sputnik called Sputnik, the Shock of the Century. And most recently I did with a grant from NASA, I did a Dictionary of the Space Age for Johns Hopkins University Press. That was sponsored by NASA, and it's a book of etymology concerning the terms of the space age. During all this period, I've been fascinated not by the photography of space, but not by the traditional pictures of rockets ascending from the ground and hardware, but the face of the astronauts, the face of the people who actually created the space program. And so for the last many years, I've been collecting the very best images, starting with Mercury, the original selection of astronauts, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, the Space Lab, and those programs, later the Apollo Soyuz. So I have a fairly large collection, a few later than that, a few very early shuttle photographs. But the predominant amount of the photographs have to do with the Apollo program, Gemini and Mercury, which are fairly rare. These pictures have been collected over a series of years, and I have them in binders, and I'm literally going to show you these in a very almost random manner. I'm just opening, but they've been sorted and resorted, so they're fairly random, but they're celebrations, they're landings. I'm just opening this at random. They're portraits, which are often very revealing because many of these guys, especially in the early days, they called themselves spam in a can. All they knew, they were going up on a high-powered missile or rocket, and they were up there without many controls, and they were extraordinarily heroic in the sense that they knew some of them weren't going to make it, and of course the Apollo 1 fire is ample evidence of that. And they became very, very familiar to Americans, these guys. And again, I'm just flipping through one of the 5 or 6 boxes or the albums I've got, and you'll see on all of these. This is one of the early Gemini fights, and you'll see on all of these that they have the original NASA's documentation, which was done with a mimeograph ink, which is blue, and then some of it is fading. But the pictures themselves, I've kept them out of light, and they've been in remarkable shape. And they're different periods that these were done, depending on when the flight was going. But these are, again, they're recovery pictures. Here's a wonderful one of Gus Grissom, the astronaut who was lost in the Apollo 1 fire. And here's another one, a recovery shot, another recovery shot and again, I'll just open another album sort of at random just to give you an idea. This is a wonderful one of the Apollo Soyuz. They were having a toast. This is when the Americans and the Soviets were in orbit together in 2 adjoining rocket spacecraft, and they drank a toast to each other. But because of the weightlessness of space, they couldn't do it in a glass, so they did it in tubes. And a lot of early pictures of training, astronauts learning on the ground how to deal with the working in space, bringing back lunar samples. And there are a number of the pictures are from the original NASA negatives and such of the landing itself. So a few of them are done a little later. This is a famous picture early on when these are the guys who put Explorer up. This is a later picture. Not all the pictures are of astronauts, the vast majority are. But I also captured the very early leadership, Wernher von Braun. Some of the early leaders of space are in here because they were as much part of the story. Many of the scientists, people like Homer Newell is in here. And again, it's meant to be. I'm going through a little portion here where they're non-astronauts. This was the guy that ran the Vanguard program. Again, John Hagen, who was was the guy who failed at first in getting into space. These go back to Goddard and some of the earlier people in space. But this album has a little of that, but a lot of the, once you get to the back of it, it's Glenn. They're wonderful pictures of John Glenn. And again, these guys were remarkably photogenic. And the other thing that happened in this period was they covered this with an amazing, they blanketed it with the photographs. And so these pictures, again, are collected from all different sources, up to and including several I bought from former NASA employees who put their material up on eBay. So again, there are about 500 images in all. And at some point, they will either become the basis, which I'm still working on, the basis for a book called The Face of Space, or in fact, a collection which I will be offering for sale to somebody who may see some value in them as important historic documents. And again, many of these, they're no longer producing 8x10 glossies. Everything that's coming out of NASA, including the historic material, is done is done digitally now. And many of these are in the original, not the earlier papers, the earlier fiber-based prints. So it's a collection that probably would be almost impossible to assemble from scratch today. So it's something I'm proud of. There are 5 albums. The collection also includes things which I'm not including in the 500, but other photographs which are informationally important, lithographs that are not original photographs, but I'm more or less including a lot of these lithographs which were done for the public. And if you wrote to NASA and wanted to picture your favorite astronaut, but these are not being counted in the 500. These are just sort of an additional sort of sub collection that I've made just to more or less as a record of the whole thing. So that's my collection. I'm very proud of it. I think it does reflect a period which we'll probably never see again, of individuals competing with each other to go into space. And I still think the space race, the landing on the moon, the mano a mano with the Soviet Union is one of the great stories of the 20th century. And one of the things that I always treasured is John McCormack was Speaker of the House, and he said that we were confronted with nuclear Armageddon with the Soviet Union, and McCormack believed that if we could have a race with the Soviet Union, like a mammoth chess game, we would forestall war. And I think that the race that we had, the game we played with the Soviets, was the space race, and I think it may have played a role in keeping us from fighting the Soviet Union, because I think both sides understood that you would have this wonderful contest, and at the end of the contest there'd be a winner and a loser. You'd probably lose some people heroically, they would die, but both countries, instead of having millions of deaths, would in fact have new technologies and condensed electronics. I mean, one of the things that we got from the space race was microminiaturization. You just couldn't put something into Earth orbit with big, huge vacuum tubes. So the whole business of communications, the whole business of the internet, all these things really came out of the space race. So I think that even makes this whole thing even more intriguing and valuable.